Early in the program, we discussed the deal paving the way for an elected oversight board for the Chicago Police Department. And joining us again are Alderwoman Emma Mitz, Alderperson Andre Vasquez, Alderman Matt Martin, and Alderman Scott Waguespack. Alderman Waguespack, I'll start with you here on the ward remap process. Mayor Lightfoot had campaigned on an independent process to redraw the city's ward maps, but it looks like it's going to be sort of another brokered backroom deal. Is that what it's shaping up to be?
No, I don't think so. I think we do need to make sure that we follow the federal guidelines, the Voting Act guidelines, and that basically is compact, contiguous wards, racial fairness, equity in terms of population. And as long as we're doing that, you do have a relatively fair process. I know a lot of people, we looked at an independent commission 10 years ago, and so there might be some options there to create some other guidelines about how to run and the public meetings that we held last time. But I think for the most part, as long as we follow the voting guidelines, and we are obliged to do that, we do get a good outcome. It's not one that I think everybody likes, because if you look at our boundaries, sometimes they are all over the map, but it's something that if the mayor gets involved in it, which I don't think she will, this is a process by elected officials, and we have to follow those federal guidelines.
It's a process by elected officials, although Alderman Vasquez, there is an independent commission proposing to draw its own map and then submit it to City Council for approval. Is that something you might be open to looking at?
Yeah, so I, along with Brian Hopkins, had co-sponsored a resolution to call for a hearing to discuss independent mapping. I think it makes sense to find out what is possible, to make sure there's a lot of things that are data-driven, and to see what different permutations of a map could look like. That being said, I do think even with independent commission or data, there are concerns about representation and what that looks like for different communities here in Chicago, right? Like, what would it look like for Asian Americans, for example, as far as representation? So I think there's a lot of factors to take into account. I would be open to it.
A lot of factors into account. Alderwoman Mitz, what I remember 10 years ago about this process was it was kind of a negotiation between the Black Caucus, Latino Caucus, white, Asian alder people about representation as the demographics of the city is changing. Is that what it's going to come down to this time as well?
I think so, Harris. I think that we have to look at all parts of the city. And I think that each alderman would know, or a group would know what's best in their area. And hopefully, you may not agree on everything, but we do know that we have to get a map that is fair and equitable across the city. So we should be willing to do that. And the one thing that usually come in play is you have particular projects that one is working on, I have worked on. I don't think a independent map drawer would know these things. So we need to be able to weigh in to say, and keeping a ward, my ward have pretty much stayed similar, but in losing some parts of it last time, and even losing projects, I'm still here. I think that we just have to have a mind to want to work wherever we at and represent all of this constituent in the city of Chicago.
So you want a sort of continuity if you're working on certain projects in certain areas. Matt Martin, I want to take a look at the ward map as it exists right now. There's a lot of squiggly lines here and very strangely drawn wards, especially if you look at like the area around Englewood. It's represented by 4 different wards, which makes it very confusing for residents to know where to go for services. Will you and other aldermen commit to a map that doesn't divide up neighborhoods like this?
I think that that's going to be a huge part of the conversation, along with seeing where we've seen population increases and decreases, as well as what Alderman Waguespack said, which is making sure that we're doing all of this in a way that's compliant with federal law. I think what's important for us to emphasize, however, is that regardless of what happens with the map, we're going to continue to work collaboratively with our fellow members of City Council. I have the real privilege of serving literally alongside Alderperson Vasquez and Alderman Waguespack, in that they're neighbors to my north and south. I rely on them tremendously when it comes to soliciting advice and feedback on decisions we're making from an infrastructure standpoint, from a business standpoint. So regardless of how the map is to change, it's critical that we continue to collaborate closely and thoughtfully, and letting folks know that they're going to get tremendous representation regardless of which ward they find themselves in.
All right, Alderman Waguespack, I want to shift gears to a report that IG Joe Ferguson put out recommending that the power to hire the ward superintendent, literally the person that you hire to sort of run the day-to-day things in the ward, should be taken out of the hands of the alderperson because it's not a Shackman exempt position. Do you agree with that? Should you not be able to hire your own ward superintendent?
No, I actually disagreed with him on this one, and we often work very closely together on a lot of different issues over the decade. And I think when I look at this one, there was a little misperception, I think, about what the ward superintendents do. They provide us with a lot of information on policy. Every alderman here learns from their ward superintendent about what works with snow plows and what doesn't, what works with grid system and what doesn't in terms of garbage pickup or even recycling. So I think what a government have already done is put together ordinance that would help craft a position that allows us to make sure that they're engaged in the policy aspect and more of an advisory role, and might be able to fit into the Shackman situation. But I think it's important to have the ward superintendent role connected to the alderman. Our constituents really rely on us to a lot of these things done, and one of the best ways is to have that person close to the ground and working with constituents, that there's a connection there and not just that they have to deal with.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. A lot of issues on your plate, and as we mentioned earlier, you might be voting on that Police Oversight Commission as soon as Tuesday and Wednesday at City Council. And our thanks to alder people Emma Mitz, Andre Vasquez, Matt Martin, and Scott Waguespack.
Thank you.